Thomas said he found my body by the side of the river. At first he thought a bear had killed me, for slash marks covered my back. Then he turned me over and saw that my throat had been slit from ear to ear. By the time of his discovery, my blood had dried and was caked to my throat and chest. There was, however, very little blood in the grass around my body, so he assumed I had been killed elsewhere, and then my body had been carried here. Thomas brushed the long hair from my face and saw the terror that registered in my eyes during my final seconds of life. He told me he still couldn't erase the look of my eyes from his mind. He said he would wake up at night in a cold sweat, reliving that moment by the river again and again. I knew Thomas well, and I knew he would never do anything to desecrate my body. He admitted to me, though, that he considered carrying my body into the river and weighing it down with stones. He was convinced he would be blamed for my death. I wasn't surprised to hear he felt that way. Both Thomas and I had seen many slaves beaten to death, and the beatings had often been because of unjust accusations. Thomas knew our master would never take the word of a slave. Sometimes a slave would try to run away, and that was always a guarantee of death. The escapees never got very far, and our master would hang them from a pole he erected outside the slave quarters. He wanted the dead bodies to be reminders of what happened to those who disobeyed his rule. He would leave the bodies up for days. The smell would overwhelm the area, and many of us would vomit from the foul odor and sight of the decaying corpses. The vultures would soon arrive, and we would be forced to watch them pick at the dead flesh of our friends or relatives. One day a male slave grew tired of those disgusting birds. He threw stones at the vultures to force them away. It worked for a while, but then our master was told what he had done. Soon that slave was found hanging from the pole. He wasn't killed immediately. Our master simply starved him to death. It took more days than I can remember, and the man's suffering tormented us all. Eventually, the vultures he had scattered returned to feast on him. It was their truth against ours, and our word mattered less than the rats that scampered across our bare legs and arms in the dead of the night. I understood Thomas's fear. He no doubt saw himself hanging from that pole for a crime he didn't commit. But before Thomas could do anything with my body, he heard a scream from behind him. He turned and saw one of the old women standing at the top of the hill. She dropped the wooden bucket she was carrying and ran back to the house. The bucket rolled to a stop, several feet from Thomas. He said he thought about running, but knew he wouldn't get very far. The men on the horses were too fast. They always caught us. There was no hope. Thomas told me he prayed our master would believe his story about finding me there. Our master did not trust us, especially the men. Thomas said he assumed he would be joining me soon in the afterlife. He only hoped his death would be quick. Within a few moments, the white man arrived. Thomas was beyond terrified. He was too scared to move or speak. I felt his terror as he told me the story, and I began to feel sick to my stomach when I thought of the vultures that would eventually devour my body by the river. Our master had sent the men and the dogs searching for me. They had been looking for 3 days. He was certain I had run away. He knew I was clever and was furious with the men for allowing me to get farther than anyone else had. But I had not run away. I couldn't have. My death was in the middle of the night. My killer grabbed the back of my hair and yanked my head back. I felt pressure against my throat, but there wasn't any pain. I felt the hot liquid roll down my neck and onto my breasts. I remember falling to the wooden floor of the cabin. Just before the darkness, I saw his face. He stood over me with the knife. I saw the bright red drops of my blood fall off the edge of the blade.